Hey everybody, this is Mr. Storm, and in this project we are going to build this game here, a rollerball game, which I'll show you what it looks like. You have a count up there in the top left-hand corner, counting the amount of pickups that we're picking up, and when we get all of them, we will have some text that displays on top of our character that says that we win the game. So that's essentially what we're building. This is going to be our first project in Unity 3D. Um, the nice thing about this project is this is a tutorial that exists already on Unity's website. Now, the reason why I'm doing a tutorial that already exists on Unity's website is because it's a great project to start with. If you go down to unity3d.com/learn/tutorials, you'll find this roll a ball tutorial. And there are a series of videos teaching you how to build this project. Now, I'm going to teach you how to build this project in my own video. And the reason why I'm duplicating some efforts here is because these videos get into the scripting. They teach you how to script this game and write the scripts for the game. I am not going to ask you to write scripts for this game. I will write the scripts for you, and you will just implement them in the game the way we've been doing in the last class. So last semester, or whenever you took the Game Development Fundamentals 1 class, we were focusing on 2D development, and I would give you the assets and you would create games using the assets I've given you. And we're going to do the same thing with this course as well. I'm not going to get into teaching you scripting. If you want to learn game development scripting, take my computer programming class. The second semester in that class deals with scripting in Unity. All right, so hopefully if you've been messing around with Unity in the past, hopefully you've done this tutorial before, so this should seem pretty easy to catch on to. I'm going to go ahead and create a new project. So new project here. And I'm going to call this project Marbles, because that's a cool name for the game. I'm going to make sure that it's in 3D, because I do not want to do 2D development in this class. Again, we're doing 3D development in Game Development 2. So I'm going to keep it 3D here. And I'm going to click Create Project. And it's going to take its time to build the project. And in the meantime, we're going to talk a little bit about 3D development while my game is building. So back in Game Development Fundamentals 1, we were focused on 2D development, which meant we only had an X and a Y axis to really pay attention to, because we were dealing with horizontal and vertical movement. That's all we really needed to care about. Now we're going to have 3 axes of movement, 3 axes of movement, with the X, the Y, and the Z axes. And so learning how to move around in Unity is going to be a little bit more difficult than it was in 2D. So I have my project open now, and up here in my scene view, which is where we build our game, you can see that there's really not much here. What we have is we have a main camera, we have a directional light, and that's pretty much it. Whenever you start a new 3D game in Unity, it always comes with these 2 objects, a main camera and a directional light. It also comes with a skybox. So if you look here, there's kind of a horizon type thing here. That's the skybox. And so it comes with a default skybox, which is nice. So the main camera, we're pretty familiar with that. Main camera allows us to actually see the game. And if you look down here, I have my game view open, so you can see what the game looks like. I also have my directional light, which allows us to add some light to the objects in the game. And once we start putting objects in here, you'll see what I mean. Now, as far as movement, if you hold down the right mouse button, you get this eyeball icon. And if you drag it around, you will see that I am moving around just like I'm kind of moving someone's head, right? Now, there's also that little I don't know, Tetris piece looking icon below the eye icon. That is corresponding to WASD. So just like movement in a computer game, if you push WASD, you can move around the scene just like you're moving a character in a video game. It's really intuitive. It's my favorite way of moving around in 3D space because I play a lot of computer games, and so I'm used to this movement style. So if you just get used to using that, you'll be able to zero in on objects and move around your game space a whole lot easier. Okay, so let's get some assets in here. But first, I actually want to organize my assets folder a little bit. We already have our scenes folder with sample scene in here. I actually want to create a new scene. And I'm going to save this scene as main. I'm going to put it in my scenes folder. So now I have my main scene. Okay. Now I also want to have a couple of folders in here. First of all, I'm going to have a scripts folder. And this is a good chance or a good time to import the assets that we need for our scripts folder. So if you forget how to do that, let's go into the folder and right click, go to import new asset, and we will find the scripts that you hopefully have downloaded from Canvas. If you haven't done that yet, go ahead and do that. Mine are on my desktop, and let's see, Marble scripts, there we go. And I have these 3 scripts. You're going to need all 3 scripts for the game. I'm going to click import, and there they go. So now I have my scripts. All of our scripting is done. Hooray. Okay. Next thing we're going to need is, we'll just get to those when we need them. All right. So this is a very boring game. I don't have anything in here yet. The first thing I need is a floor. I need a place for my player character to move around on. So what I'm going to do is go up here to the hierarchy. I'm going to click create, and I'm going to choose a 3D object, and the object I'm going to use is plane. Notice that there are a lot of different kinds of 3D objects here that we can play with. I'm going to use plane because it's just a simple, basic drab floor, right? That's all we're looking for. Cool. Now, the thing you need to know about planes are that they are essentially a 2D object in a 3D game space. So the top of the plane object has a material on it and is solid. If we go underneath and look up, we can see through it because it's 2D, right? Now planes are cool for your floor and stuff, but you don't want to use planes when you're building walls, because if you go on the other side of the wall, you're going to be able to see through it, unless there's another plane on the other side keeping you from being able to see it. All right, cool. So my plane is there, but why is it not showing up in my game view? Well, that's because my camera is below the it's below the plane. If we come down here, you can see that my camera is looking below the plane, and because we're below it, I can see right through it. So instead of moving my camera at this point, what I want to do is actually reset my plane to 0, 0, 0. So I'm going to type 0 on the x-axis, 0 on the y-axis, and 0 on the z-axis. Now my camera is a bit far out, so we can actually modify the camera now while we're looking at it. My camera is at 0, 1, -10. I'm actually going to rotate my camera at 45 degrees, and I'm going to bring it up quite a bit. So let's bring it in. Oh, not side to side. Let's bring it in a little bit. And that looks about good. We can drop the camera down a little bit more. All right, yeah, that's about good for my game space here. That looks good to me. I'm going to set my X back to 0. All right, so that'll give me a good command over my game space so I can see it there. Now, one thing we want to do is, this is a boring white background. And when we bring in our player character, it's going to be white as well. So it's going to be hard to see the two together. So I'm actually going to create a new folder in my assets folder called materials. Just like with 2D assets, we had scripts that we would attach to our game object. Well, with these 3D objects, we can attach things called materials. Materials can either be textures or just simple colors. With this one, we're going to create just a simple color material. Okay, so I'm going to right click and go to create and come down here to material. There it is, material. I'm going to name this floor. Sure, why not? Now, with my floor material, I have some options over here in my inspector. The only option I really care about right now is this albedo property. Basically, it's just the RGB values and the transparency values. It's an RGBA value. So the red, green, and blue. It's a fancy way of saying what color is it. So I'm going to choose my color picker here, and I'm going to set a nice, let's do like a cool aquamarine blue, or like a navy blue, a little baby blue. That looks good. That's fine. So now I have this blue material. Now, in order to apply this blue material to my plane, all I have to do is drag it onto my plane just like this. Boom. So now I have my blue material. And let's say, well, now that doesn't look as good as I thought it was going to. I want to change the color. We can go back into our color picker and make it a little bit darker in real time and kind of see what it looks like as we make changes to it. So I'm going to do that now so you can see, and we can just kind of play around with the color values. Just pick a color that you think looks kind of nice. That looks cool. I like that. Okay. So now we have our floor object set up. Let's go ahead and create a new character. So I'm going to click Create, 3D Object, and I'm going to bring in a sphere. Now my sphere is hovering a little bit above my plane here, and it's kind of off to the side. So I'm going to reset everything back to 0. And notice that my sphere, I'm zooming in on the scene view. I don't want that. Notice that my sphere here is kind of halfway above the plane and halfway below, right? It's right in the middle. So in order to fix that, what I'm going to do is go to my sphere, and I'm going to bring it up on the Y by 0.5. Now the reason I'm doing that is because this sphere is a 1 unit tall sphere, and it was halfway into my plane. By bringing it up at a 0.5, I'm sitting exactly right on top of that plane. So we're good there. Now, I'm kind of noticing that my plane is a little bit small. So I actually want to scale my plane a little bit. I'm actually going to scale it by, I don't know, let's do 2 here and 2 on the Z. Now I need to readjust my camera again because I made it a little bit big. So let's see. Zoom my camera out. Oh, not that way. Bring it up a little bit. Zoom it in. So you just got to play with these values until you find something that you like. Okay. Yeah, I want to see the whole game. We'll come up a little bit more. All right. Getting better. All right. Yeah, sure, whatever, that works. That's fine. Okay, so now I have my game play space. I think it's about time for a script. But you might be thinking, Mr. Storm, what about your rigid body and your colliders? Well, good point. When we create a new 3D game object, notice that we already have a collider attached to it. For example, this ball, because it's a sphere, it comes in with a sphere collider, which is exactly what we want. It already has the collider attached to it, but it doesn't have a rigid body. So I'm going to need a rigid body for this object. So I can go to Attach or Add Component and go to Physics. Now, some of you are going to be tempted to click Physics 2D, but we're not working in 2D, so we don't want that. We want just a regular rigid body inside of Physics. So I'm going to use that. Now, it looks like my game works, or it looks like everything's good to go. I have a rigid body on my movement, or on my ball. I have a collider. Let's go ahead and add a script to our player to see if we can make it move. So I'm going to take this player controller script, drag it up onto my sphere, and I'm going to check my sphere over here in the inspector. Oh, I don't want to rename it. And make sure I have everything good to go. And we do. I have a couple of public variables here that I've given you. Don't worry about count text, win text, or total pickups yet. We will change those values, but we do want to change speed. I'm going to put it to about 10 and see what happens. So I'm going to hit go. Alrighty, that looks pretty good. I can move with the arrow keys. Everything looks good. Beautiful, beautiful. Oh, but I fall off the screen. All right, so we're going to need to put walls up eventually, but we'll get to that in a second. The next thing I want to do is I actually want to make my camera follow my player so that it feels a little bit more dynamic. So I have my main camera here. And one thing we could do is we could just attach our main camera to the sphere object as a child. Now, that's kind of cool. It's an easy solution, but notice what happens when I start moving. Oh God, oh God, okay, stop it, make it stop. Oh gosh, make it stop. Okay, so I'm not gonna do that. I don't want to attach the main camera to the sphere because not only does it take its positional values like it would in 2D, but it also takes its rotational values, and we don't want that in a 3D space because then we'll just be tumbling around. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to make it a child. What I am going to do is take this camera controller script that I've written. I'm going to attach it to our main camera. And when I look at that script here in the inspector, it says player, and then there's a game object reference there. So what is my player? Well, it's this sphere object, and I forgot to rename it, so I'm just going to rename it now. Player. So I have this sphere object, and or this player object, I'm just going to grab it and drag it in there so we have a reference to the player. Then if I play the game, my camera should follow my player around as he goes around the field. And now that I have my camera following, I don't have to be zoomed in as much on that. My camera doesn't have to be in as much on that thing. But I'm noticing that, let's see. Let's bring that in a little bit so that my camera so my sphere isn't on the top of the screen. I want it down toward the bottom. And I'm actually going to bring my camera down a little bit more into the play space. So again, we just have to adjust values as we see fit. Now another problem I'm seeing is that my shadow looks kind of dinky coming off the ball there. I want to make my shadow a little bit more dynamic. So I'm going to go to my directional light, and I'm actually going to rotate the directional light so we get some cooler, more dynamic values. That looks pretty good. Let's rotate the Y a little bit, bring it around. That looks even better. And let's try the Z and see if that does anything. Nope, it's just rotating the orientation of the light. So we'll just keep that at 0. So you can play around with your directional light controls to make sure that you have a cool, dynamic looking plane for your ball to roll around on. That looks better. I like that a lot more. Okay, great. Next thing, we want to create some walls. So our walls are kind of easy to build. All we need to do is just create a bunch of 3D objects. I'm just going to create, actually, you know what? I'm going to create an empty object here first, and I'm going to rename this object walls so that I can organize everything in my hierarchy. And I want to make sure my walls object is set to 0 here, because all of everything that's a child of this walls object is going to be based off of, or its transform is going to be relative to the transform of the parent. So we want to make sure that starts at 0 to begin with. All right, and inside of walls, I'm going to create a new 3D object, cube. Now we have our cube here. That's cool. Right on. And this cube, I'm actually going to make it, let's see, we'll put it 20. 20 is about right on the X, and we'll put it, let's say 2.5 on the Y to make it nice and tall. And for the Z, we'll make it 0.5, 0.5. Okay, so that's the scale. That's a nice looking wall. And I'm going to bring that up. Nope, that's the wrong thing. I'm going to bring that up to, let's see, what's a good position for the wall? Let's say at about 10. Looks good. Doesn't look like anything's interfering over here. It's pretty much perfect. So we'll put it right at 10. And we're going to call this north wall. Let's rename this north wall. Now what we can do is, let me reorient myself so it's a little easier to see what we're doing. All right, so now we have our north wall. Let's duplicate this and rename this to south wall. And then we can take this Z value and make it -10, and that'll put it right on the bottom of the screen. Let's duplicate our south wall, rename it east wall. And let's change some values on our east wall. Well, first of all, we want the x to now be 0.5. We want the z to be 20. And we want to set this to 0 on the z and -10 on the x. Okay. Sweet. Sweet, sweet, sweet. I'm trying to back up a little bit here and zoom in here so I can see. Now notice my walls don't quite jive together perfectly, but you know what? That's okay. I'm fine with that on this project. As long as there's no place for my ball to escape, that's all that matters. All right, and then we need to make our west wall. So I'm going to duplicate and rename west wall. Okay, and with this, all I need to do is instead of -10 on the x, we'll put it at +10 on the x. Okay, so now we have walls. Now the thing is, just as when we brought in our sphere, we had a collider attached to the sphere by default, same thing for the walls. If you notice, there is a collider here attached to it, a box collider. Now these are static objects, these walls, because they don't have rigid bodies attached to them. So as soon as they come into place, they already have colliders attached to them and everything works. So if I hit play now, I should be able to move around my space without exiting the level. And I do. And I get that cool little satisfying hop like I would if a ball was running into a wall. That's nice. Okay, perfect. Alrighty. Beautiful. I'm going to bring my east wall. I'm going to bring my east wall and my west wall in just a little bit because I said I was cool with it not matching up perfectly, but I lied. I actually need it to match nicely. All right, so that looks a whole lot better. Okay, so now we have a ball, we have some movement, we have walls set up. Now, at this point, if you wanted to, you could actually, instead of just creating a boring box like I did, you can create an entire level. You can just keep going. Put planes down for floors. There's sloped planes and everything else in here. So if we create a 3D object, you can do, quads, spheres, cubes. You can make whatever you want and add a bunch of stuff to this thing. You can even add trees if you want. There's a tree there, which we can play around with and make it do cool stuff, but I'm going to delete that now. Nope, not duplicate. That's the opposite of what I wanted to do. All right, but you can add whatever cool 3D objects you want into the game, and you can play around with it and make a cool level, like little jumps and stuff, whatever you want to do. It's up to you. I'm just going to create a boring box here, and it's totally fine if you just want to do a boring box with me. We can both be boring. That's no problem. All right, so the last thing we need to do is implement pickups. I need to create some kind of system that'll allow me to pick up items in the game. So let's see. Well, it's easy. We can just create a cube. So I'm going to create a new 3D object, a cube. And I'm going to set it to 0, 0, 0. Okay, now it's right there. I'm going to turn off my player object for now, just so it stays out of the way and it doesn't bother me. So with my cube, I'm going to rename this to pickup. Okay, and that pickup, I'm going to raise it up off of the z-axis by 0.5. Nope, not the z-axis, the y-axis, 0.5. And I want to rotate it by 45 degrees on all sides to give it more of a dynamic feel. And I want to set the scale to 0.5 on all axes as well to make it just a little smaller. Okay, so now we have this cube that's kind of floating above the play space, which is cool. That's what we want. What we don't want, however, is for it just to sit there and look boring. So what we'll do is we'll create a material to attach to it. New material. And we'll call this pickup. And we'll make it a nice yellow color, like a gold. Actually, a bright yellow. We'll do bright yellow. That's fine. And we'll drop it onto the pickup object. Looking better already. And we will attach a script called rotator. This rotator script is going to make that pickup rotate in the game while we're playing. So let's hit play and check it out and see what happens. And look, it's rotating. It looks nice. Looks really cool. That looks like a pickup you would find in a video game. So we're going to stop that now. Okay, a couple things about this pickup. We have a box collider attached to it by default because it's a 3D object. So the box collider is there by default, but the script that is written on our player controller is looking for, right here, on trigger enter. It's looking for triggers, okay? So what I'm going to do on this pickup is I'm actually going to set it as a trigger, which is great. But the other thing we need to do is we need to set a rigid body. Because remember, I've been saying for months now that anything that moves in your game needs to have a rigid body. Now, the reason for that is because any movement in the game that has a collider attached to it is going to update the static collider cache in Unity often. Every frame of the game. So we want to make sure that we're not using too many resources in the engine, because with these 3D games, it's going to get much, much more resource intensive. So instead of making it re-render the static cache for all of our colliders, we're going to add a rigid body to it, just like it's a moving object, because that's what it is. We'll add a rigid body, and we'll actually make it kinematic. So kinematic is basically an object that moves in the game, but doesn't need to have any physical forces applied to it. We don't want this thing to have mass or use gravity or any of that stuff. So we're going to click is kinematic. Okay, perfect. Well, now that I have my pickup, I can actually, well, yeah, at this point, oh, one last thing I need to do. I need to tag this as a pickup, because if we look at our player controller script again, we are going to be comparing tags, and it's going to be this pickup tag here. So I need to set a pickup tag to the pickup. So I'm going to create a new tag here, call it pick up. Oh, make sure things are capitalized properly, and click save. And then on this pickup object, I'm going to select the pickup tag. So now we have this object we can create a prefab out of. So I'm going to go to my assets. Get out of here, tree. I'm going to go to my assets folder here. I'm going to create a new folder called prefabs. And in my prefabs folder, I'm going to drop this pickup object. Okay, perfect. So now we have a pickup. Let's create an empty game object called pickups to organize our pickups. Pickups, and I will drop my pickup in there. Oh, let's make sure that's set to 0 real quick. See, I made a rookie mistake. Make sure we zero out our positional values, and then I will make it a child. Alrighty. And then from this point, we can actually just move our pickups where we want them to go in the world. So a way to make this super easy on ourselves is over here in our perspective menu, we have this Y axis, X-axis perspective. So we can click it and just get that perspective right up front. So I'm going to click the Y like I did there, and I'm going to try to move around a little bit so it's easier to see what we're doing. So I'll move there, rotate it back. Okay, cool. That's pretty good, pretty easy way to see what I'm doing. All right, then I want to move this pickup object using the movement values here. Now, some of you are going to run into some trouble in this step, because you're going to click the pickup object, click the move tool like I just did, and you're going to start moving it around, and it's going to go into all weird kind of wonky ways. It's going to be going in diagonal directions and stuff like that. What you want to do here is you actually want to set that pickup at, instead of local, you want to set it to global. I got to reset this here real quick so it's sitting where it's supposed to. And I am going to start positioning my pickups in the level. And all I need to do is Control D to duplicate, and I can just start setting pickups wherever I want. Now, again, this is another thing where you can get really anal retentive about it and put them at exact values and whatnot. I'm just going to kind of throw them around in the level here in the interest of time. It's not going to look very good. It'll be sloppy, but you can make yours make a cool pattern or just make a cool circle or whatever. All right, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do that. Actually, I'll put a couple more in there. Duplicate. Why not? I'm already here. I might as well. Okay, cool. Put a bunch of pickups in there. All right, so now that that prefab is set up properly, and again, let's review this pickup object because it has a lot of stuff on there. So we're hovering 0.5 above the y-axis. We have a box collider, which is set to a trigger. It is tagged with pickup over here on the tag. We have a rigid body attached to it. It has a rotator script attached to it. Ooh, in the rigid body, we've set it to kinematic so that it doesn't use up too much of our engine memory. And we have a cool material attached to it. At this point, we should be able to play the game. And oh, I forgot to turn on my player object again. So let's go back here, go to my player, turn him on again so we can see what we're doing. At this point, I should be able to roll around and pick up these objects as I go past them. Great, perfect, easy, good stuff. Now, the last thing we need to do before we build our game is we need to create a Unity or a user interface. So I'm going to create, let's see, user interface, UI, text. I'm going to rename this and call it count text. And in the count text, if we look down here in our game mode, we can see that it's down there. I actually want it up in the top of the screen. So I'm going to, actually, let's just do it with the X and Y values. Oh, where'd we go? Okay, we'll set it there, set it up there so it's easier to see. We will set it to white, and we'll give it a placeholder of count text. Okay, if we look at our player object, you remember that count text object we had before? Well, guess what? We now have a count text, so I'll drop that in there. Easy. All right, we need one more text object, so we're going to go to UI text. We're going to rename this to win text, and we will take that win text and we will put it roughly right around the center of the screen. You can put it below your character or above. It's up to you. I'm going to set the font size to be like 28. Oh, let's do 24. 24 is better. And move them there. Set the text color to white. Okay. And I am going to set the placeholder to you win. All right, cool. Now when I go back to my player, look, I have a win text object. Well, easy. We just set the reference to that. Now we have to set the total amount of pickups in our level, because the way the script works is if the amount of pickups your player has picked up is more than or equal to the amount of total pickups in the game, then you win the game, and this text will pop up. So I'm going to set this to 12 because I have 12 total pickups in the game. And then when I play the game, I should be able to pick up all the boxes. Oh, my count text is in a weird spot. I can adjust that later. But notice that as I pick up these pickups, the count text is updating. Okay, good, good, good. And if I get to the very end, I should win the game. All right, let's, I missed it. Okay. Yay, I win, huzzah. And so that scene would be one level, and we can add more levels to it, and we can add a scripting, we can add a scene management script to move from scene to scene. But for this project, that's all I want you to do. I want you to get this game up and running. There's a lot more to do in 3D, as you can tell, but a lot of it's the same as what you're already used to. So it shouldn't be as complicated as you're probably thinking. It's going to take a bit to get used to moving around in 3D space, but if you do this project and you do it well, you will be easily set up to do the rest of the projects for this semester. So that's it for me. When you're done with this project, go ahead and build your project and turn it into me like we did last semester. And if you're unfamiliar with how to do that, I'll put a video in there showing you how to build stuff. But for now, that's it for me. Thank you for paying attention, and I will see you next time.